Days. I wanted to start by asking about Josh Naylor. He's been a very obvious topic of conversation in the offseason, but there was that sound the other day on Sirius XM of Justin Hollander saying, hey, make no bones about it. Josh Naylor is our top priority. How confident are you that they have a good chance to re-sign him or might, and how important would that signing be?
I think they certainly have a chance to keep him. There's money there. Josh Naylor not phased by hitting in Seattle, but there are 29 other teams in Major League Baseball. So, there's a chance, but, it's not like he's from here. It's not like there's any allegiance to this particular area of the country or even this team, even though, he had a chance to go pretty darn far in October. And, players bond, that's a thing. But once free agency comes, just about every player out there, it's first and foremost about dollars. And one of the things that isn't really being talked about enough right now is the effect on the CBA situation with this year's free agent class. I don't really expect as many big contracts to be handed out as are being projected. I think there are going to be teams that are just going to be – they're just going to sit back and wait and think that – the next CBA is going to be better for them, and that's going to help keep numbers down. Some of these guys are going to get big money, but I think if it's down a little bit, if it's your typical free agent crop in terms of spending over the last 3 to 5 years and isn't an outlier, that might play into Seattle's hands here a little bit and help them keep a Josh Naylor or extend a player that's already on their roster. With first base and DH being a little bit interchangeable, there are a lot of teams out there. Like I said, there's 29 other teams out there, and the vast majority of them have a spot for Josh Naylor because he's not a $35, $40 million player. Just about every team out there can go out there and have a chance to sign him and offer him the kind of money that he's probably looking for and he'll probably command. I think it's huge for Seattle to get something done early in free agency if they're going to make a move in free agency to get it done early, because hitters are still really not going to want to come sign in Seattle. Nothing has changed about that. Their run into the postseason doesn't change how difficult it is to hit. Their players are not going to want to come here and have their offense suppressed. So that's certainly part of this conversation. And so there's a lot of backup plans that if you're thinking about first base for the Seattle Mariners, Josh Naylor is not a done deal. And until it is, you got to think about other players. You got to think even about a Pete Alonso. You got to think about O'Hearn, and even the Japanese players that are coming over. One of them's being posted today, I believe. Until it's done, it's not done, and it might be just as unlikely as it feels likely, considering the run they went on and how big Josh Naylor was for that.
You might have, you kind of touched on my question, but didn't provide any specifics. Do you think there's a team that, other than the Mariners, that is zeroed in on Josh Naylor, saying, look, we need a first baseman, he would fit here? Who's the main contender, I guess I should say, when it comes to trying to sway Josh away from Seattle?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of them. If I'm the Nationals, I'm in. I'm trying to take a step forward next year. I'm in on a guy who has a high floor, isn't going to cost me, superstar money, and I probably don't need to give 5-6+ years to. That's the kind of player I want. The Mets, who need to go spend on a bunch of pitching, may want to spend a little bit less at first base, but still get pretty good production. Maybe they let Pete Alonso walk and zero in on a guy like Josh Naylor. There are a lot of teams out there, and I think the biggest contender, to Seattle, and I'm not even sure if Seattle's number one on the list, but the biggest contender is the team that's going to be willing to spend the most money on him. And there's a lot of projections out there right now. I've seen 5 years and $130 million. I've seen 4 years and $100. I've seen 3 and $60. I just don't know what kind of a market we're going to see because of the situation with the collective bargaining agreement. If it's the big market, Seattle's going to have to go 4 years, maybe even a fifth to get him, which is a little steep for me. But I think this is one of those cases where if you overspend just a little bit to keep Josh Naylor, it goes a long way. I think he's extremely important to the Mariners situation, because it's unlikely they're going to go out and get Pete Alonso, and it's unlikely they're going to go out and get anyone else to play any position on a daily basis really, really early in the process unless it's Josh Naylor.
Yeah. Jason, I think, and I'm sure you know this, that what a lot of Mariners fans were worried about or most heartbroken about when they lost Game 7 wasn't just the heartbreak and shock of the suddenness of that ending, but also the fear that, wow, what if they never get back here again? What if so many things had to go right? What if there was so much luck or a historic season from Cal involved? So I wanted to ask you, I guess, how close are they really based on like talent and what they have, and what are some important pieces to add?
Yeah, I think once the season ended and Naylor and Eugenio Suarez hit free agency, all of a sudden you're starting back where you were in July, right? And Jorge Polanco as well. So you're kind of back, in that spot. And if you think about Randy Arozarena, he's only got a year left on his deal. So now you're thinking, wow, okay, this core just shrunk by almost half because of free agency. So that's why getting someone back pretty early in the process really helps plan the rest of the winter and give them a shot to execute. I think trades are going to be a big part of this offseason. But obviously you look at third base, first base is obviously near the top of that list. Whether it's Naylor or someone else, third base, they have to figure out something at third base, and I'm not sure if Suarez makes a whole lot of sense to bring back. I certainly wouldn't be comfortable giving him, 3 years or anything of that nature, but they need to find something this winter and not head into next year with multiple spots in that batting order where they're starting an unproven player. And that's something they've done quite a bit the last 3, 4, 5 years. Well, the last, 20 years, really. And, if you're telling me you have an opportunity to acquire a player and start a Cole Young at second base and your new player at third base, or you bring back Suarez for a year and you start him at third base, I think you're okay doing that. But what do you do at DH without Polanco, around? Is that Canzone and you're running with Robles in right field? Not feeling as confident about that situation as it looked this year. But if you go out and you add your DH, or you add your second baseman, or you add your third baseman, and you don't add to those other two spots to fill the holes created by free agency, including bringing those players back that were here a year ago, now you're in a hole, and now you're down in that fringy range again where, the club looks like an 85-win team, and they have an opportunity to just put that sort of roster building and position and status completely behind them. And, that's why I keep talking about getting something done early, because it just gives you so many more opportunities to go out and say, okay, we have our first baseman, or we have our third baseman, or we know exactly who the second baseman is going to be. We now got a proven guy to do that. Whatever that might be, to focus on like two other spots in that lineup. Yes, they need some relief help. They need to go out and get probably a really good middle guy and another back end, arm to help out Munoz and Spire and Brash back there. But if they don't fix this lineup again, they're right back where they've been the last couple of years, where Julio and Cal and Arozarena's, due back, and Crawford's, fairly steady, but they just need more impact. And when those guys hit free agency, those three players, they just look like a pretty bad offensive club right now. They look like a five hitter deep lineup when, they spent the majority of the second half of 2025 finally looking like a complete lineup. And we saw the difference that makes having essentially 9 hitters in the lineup that can do some damage.
Who's a young guy in the minors right now that you're excited to see and you feel like is going to be a contributor next year? Maybe it's a guy that we've already seen.
Yeah, I think Cade Anderson needs like 5 minutes in the minors, so that's a pretty easy one. I mean, legitimately, if the scheduling and workload weren't really as big of a thing, and from college to pro ball as it is, Cade Anderson could have helped the Mariners in October. Like, there's zero question about it. So I'm not sure how much time, Seattle's going to, keep him down in the minors. But a little more fun one for me is Colt Emerson. Had such a good year last year, started off a little bit slow. Just a young kid, 20 years old, can play shortstop, could play second for you if you needed him to, and could play third for you if you needed him to. He moved really quickly and obviously ended the year in Tacoma and did some things there. I think he starts the year in the minors again. But, his performance and how he handles certain things, it is going to dictate how quickly he gets to the big leagues. And I wouldn't rule out something in June or so, getting him to the big leagues. But if you're the Mariners, you really can't go into this season leaning on a Colt Emerson to start the season for you, at third base or shortstop or second base, whatever it is. You have to let him force the issue. He's too young. It's too big of a risk. And you're a team that should head into the regular season as one of the 5 or 6 World Series favorites. If that doesn't happen, something went wrong this offseason.
Is there, leaning into that conversation, I've been wondering whether they do that. Like, do they just roll with Ben Williamson at third and roll with Young at second and roll with a couple really young guys as regular starters? Are you anticipating they will do that, or are you more confident that they add veteran help and then kind of leave a runway for those guys?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's acceptable, and they're probably thinking something along these lines too. If we do that at one spot, let's say they bring back Josh Naylor or something, close to that. And then maybe they're deciding, okay, do we feel a little bit better about Ben Williamson at third, or do we feel a little bit better about Cole Young at second? Not both. Go out and get a proven guy for that other spot. Then go find somebody who can play, DH for you. Maybe he's an outfielder and a DH, and you run with 2 or 3 DHs. They did a really good job this year handling Jorge Polanco and him getting DH time and Cal getting DH time and mixing in Garver and Canzone and Rayleigh, especially earlier in the year, and kind of mixing that up. And then Robles went down and some things had to change. But I think they did a really good job with that. And I think that's the kind of a situation they want at DH. So it kind of really comes down to, can we find, 2 veteran guys to fill those 3 spots? And then we could go with a younger player at that other spot and be okay, because you can address things during the season. I just think if you start the year and your lineup is missing, 2 key guys and you're going with unproven players, you're just asking to struggle offensively. You're asking for inconsistency. You're asking to lose a lot of games, 4-2, 3-2, 3-1. And I think Mariners fans here have seen that enough. And I think the front office has seen that enough. And I don't want to go back there. So I think their opportunity with what's available, with the payroll, which isn't necessarily going to be about free agency as much, but it gives them so much more flexibility to make trades, to go get that guy who maybe is already making some money. Maybe he's already making $15 million, and they swipe a couple of minor leaguers for him and keep him in the lineup for a year or 2. There's a lot of names out there that make tons of sense that fans aren't necessarily going to be excited about. A name that's come up before in the past is Alec Bohm in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is probably going to move on there. They tried to last year, and he's a very steady player. And if you added him to the lineup and re-signed Josh Naylor, you'd still have a lot of money left over and a lot of prospects left over to go out and add another impact player or 2 to the roster, including another hitter, and still have money left to go do other things. And so you'd even be able to play in that kind of a scenario at the top of the reliever market in free agency, if that's what you wanted to do. We don't really know exactly where the payroll is going to be, but we have a pretty decent idea because they told us. And there's room. There's room to make moves and make deals without, this is the point I keep making.
Yeah.
Don't have to go out and create space this winter. Don't have to go out and trade Luis Castillo's $24 million. Don't have to go out and move Randy Rosarena's projected ARB salary of around 17, 18. They don't have to go do any of that. They could just keep those guys as is and then go use the payroll they have available and still end up as good or better team than they ended 2025. And that has to be the goal if you're that front office right now.
How different will and should this bullpen look next year?
A little bit. I think generally there's turnover in bullpens pretty much every year. I think the guys at the back end, we always talk about how relief pitching is volatile, but with the Matt Brashes and the Andres Munoz, even Gabe Spire from a performance standpoint, those guys are fairly predictable from year to year. Everybody else, pretty unpredictable. I'm not sure if Pizarro belongs in that conversation yet, so we'll throw him in the other bucket. Yeah, I think they need to go out and add a guy that's Matt Brash-like in terms of performance and reliability, whether that's just a 1-year guy or they go get a younger guy that can handle that spot for 2, 3, 4 years, and then go out and get some more middle guys that are reliable. I think they were really starting to get out of Trent Thornton what they expected to get out of him right before he got hurt. But I don't think you can enter the offseason thinking, all right, well, Thornton's just going to be Thornton. Because, again, he's among that volatile bunch where you just don't really know what you're going to get from year to year. I think there are 2 arms missing in that bullpen, and I think they're both external. I think they're acquisitions. They're free agent signings or trade acquisitions. So I look for a lot of deals being talked about this winter where Seattle adds a bat and a reliever, or they go and get that first baseman or that reliever or that third baseman and get a reliever. We haven't seen this team really spend money on that bullpen. So I'm really curious in this position, because they haven't been in this position before, where winning the World Series is literally right there in front of them. Will they actually spend in free agency on a reliever? Because there's some pretty good ones out there. Ryan Helsley, formerly of the Cardinals, that's been a guy I've had my eye on for a couple of years. He was traded at the deadline. He's a free agent, but it's $10+ million to go get him. Are they going to be interested in doing something like that? I'm really curious to see how they handle that. But they're a couple of arms away in that bullpen. I think just about everybody else is going to be a part of it that was this year, depending on, whether they're healthy or not. I think the wild card here is can Santos be healthy and bring them good middle relief at the very least. They had a really good year with Chicago before they traded for him, and he hasn't given them anything in 2 years.